They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and sometimes this is more accurate than we might realize. Some photos might appear completely normal at first glance but hide something sinister in the background, while others carry dark backstories not immediately obvious from the image alone. Here is a collection of mysterious photos that defy explanation. Number 10. Eerie Lindenville Air Force Base. The Lindenville Air Force Station, situated close to Lindenville, Vermont, was first known as the North Concord Air Force Station after it was completed in 1956. But today it's been abandoned, and there have been reports of some very strange incidents occurring there ever since. The base was constructed in the midst of the Cold War when the threat of nuclear attack on the U.S. had become a very real concern. To counter this, the site was chosen to serve as a radar base for the early detection of such an attack by the Soviet Union should it ever occur. It was equipped to detect fallout from a nuclear explosion and to send any relevant data about such an event to certain air command bases. The base was manned by 174 military staff members who lived in a village on the property, and they were tasked with guarding the radar equipment. Luckily, such an attack never took place, and by 1963, the base was a white elephant as it had been shut down and abandoned. But it lives on in legend as people have reported experiencing some strange things there, some of which were reported in the media. The first strange incident happened 2 years before the base was shut down when an unidentified flying object appeared in the skies over the East Mountain. It was reported to have hovered there for 18 minutes before suddenly disappearing. Many people feel that this was just the start of another, even more disconcerting event. The incident happened just hours before the famous alien abduction of Barney and Betty Hill in New Hampshire, and there's been some speculation that they might have encountered the same craft that was seen near the base. 2 years after the base was abandoned, it was sold to Ed Sawyer, who used it to sell scrap metal and run a woodwork shop on the premises. The area was clearly marked as private property, but this didn't stop a group of snowmobilers from entering the access road, and their decision led to tragedy. A chain had been put up across the road, serving as a makeshift gate, but the snowmobilers failed to notice it, and one of them struck the chain, losing their life in the process. Another person also lost their life at the base a few years later when they entered the base without permission and climbed to the top of one of the radar towers. It's believed that due to the buildings not being maintained, they lost their footing and fell. Many people who have been to the base state that as soon as they arrived, they became aware of a strange atmosphere. While some put it down to the eerie silence in the area, others believe that it's part of something more sinister, possibly paranormal. Sawyer has confirmed this and has stated that as soon as he arrived at the property, something seemed to change. Some people believe that the strange atmosphere is the result of the Cold War that was being fought at the time. Today, the base still sits abandoned as it continues to deteriorate, thanks to the elements, and it serves as a reminder of a time when the possibility of nuclear war was very real and when people were urged to construct their own fallout shelters. Some of the photos taken at the base perfectly capture its eerie atmosphere and the strange silence that surrounds it. Number 9. Dangerous Space Junk Incident. The object in this photo may look like something that was picked up at a junkyard, and you'd be hard-pressed to figure out what it was used for before the photo was taken, since its shape doesn't give much away. You'd also be correct in assuming that it was junk, but this isn't your everyday trash that can be found at a salvage yard or lying in the back of an unkempt garden. The difference is that this is space junk, and it's more dangerous than you might think, which is evidenced by an incident that occurred on the 8th of March 2024 at 2:29 p.m. A man named Alejandro Otero, who hails from Naples, Florida, was on vacation when he got a worrying call from his son, who was in the Florida home at the time. He told his father that he heard a tremendous sound and that when he investigated, he found 2 massive holes in the house's ceiling and floor. He discovered that something had fallen from the sky and hit the house at speed, causing a great amount of damage. Luckily, Alejandro's son was unharmed during the incident since he was 2 rooms over from the area where the object impacted, but he was understandably very shaken up. Upon further investigation, after Alejandro had returned home from his holiday, they found that the object was a cylindrical slab, and it was later determined to weigh about 2 pounds. He quickly realized that the object had traveled through Earth's atmosphere. He immediately thought it was a meteorite, but upon closer inspection, they realized it was man-made, and it dawned on the family that it likely belonged to NASA or another space agency. He then came across a tweet by Harvard-Smithsonian astronomer Jonathan McDowell, in which he explained that a 2.9-ton pallet from the International Space Station had been jettisoned after it was used for an upgrade. He added that the pallet would make an uncontrolled re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere between the 7th and 9th of March, and that some of the pallet would remain intact, with as much as a half-ton of its fragments being predicted to make it back to Earth. Alejandro responded to that tweet, stating that severe damage had been done to his house, adding that he'd left messages with NASA but got no response. The object was then analyzed by engineers from the American Outer Space Exploration Agency to ascertain who would be liable for the damages. After the pallet was jettisoned, it was monitored by the European Space Agency, and it was known that some debris would fall to Earth's surface, but they were confident that it would cause minimal damage and stated that the chances of someone being hit were extremely low. The damage to the family's home was determined to be around $155,000, and they're currently in the process of sending the insurance claim to NASA, who has been found to be liable for the cost of the damage. It's alarming to think that an object of such a lightweight that's about the size of a soda can do that amount of damage, and Alejandro has stated that he's thankful that no one was hurt in the incident. Number 8. Haunted St. Augustine Lighthouse. The St. Augustine Lighthouse, located on Anastasia Island off the coast of Florida, didn't always stand as tall as it does today. In 1871, the ocean and elements had a serious impact on the building, and it started to not only erode but sink. Hence, the decision was made to reconstruct it, and the job of overseeing this work was given to a man named Hezekiah H. Pitt. For some strange reason, he was in the habit of bringing his children to the site with him. Unfortunately, this had a tragic outcome, as an accident caused 3 girls to lose their lives. It is said that the lighthouse is still haunted by their spirits today. Many staff members and people who have visited the lighthouse report hearing children laughing in the middle of the night, and that music boxes that are for sale at the gift shop often mysteriously open by themselves, making the music that then plays even more eerie. People who work in the building have also reported that they would bolt the doors before leaving at night, but when they returned the following morning, they would find them unlocked and open without explanation. Tourists often partake in tours of the building, and in recent years there have been many reports of visitors being touched by an unknown hand and, in some instances, being grabbed by something they describe as a shadow. One famous photo from the lighthouse shows a figure standing at the top of the building, and it is said that this is the spirit of a woman in white who is often seen in the nearby woods, though it isn't known who the spirit belonged to. While the lady in white has never approached or hurt anyone, the same can't be said for another ghost that has been seen in the building, known as the man in blue. One lighthouse keeper reported being chased up and down the tower stairs one night, and when dawn finally broke, he left and vowed to never return. It has been suggested that this is the spirit of Joseph Andrew, a lighthouse keeper who lost his life while painting the building in 1859, but others think that the spirit is that of a different keeper who was found deceased in the lighthouse when the light wasn't switched on one night. It is also common for people to encounter the smell of cigar smoke on the tower's landing, despite smoking being prohibited. Hence, it is believed that this is the remnant of staff who used to light coal fires to keep warm while smoking cigars back in the day. The man who currently serves as the lighthouse keeper states that he has on several occasions heard the sounds of someone wearing boots walking up the tower stairs, and when he investigates, finds that there is no one there. One man stated that he was in the tower's basement when someone grabbed his ankle, but he was shocked to find that he was completely alone. He also reported having a few hairs on his arm plucked out, with the only explanation being that something paranormal was going on in the building. Despite all the strange activity, the lighthouse still functions today, and annually it's visited by up to 200,000 tourists, most of whom are not only interested in its long history but also the hauntings that are said to take place there. Number 7. Baffling 3 hairs symbol. Most of us are familiar with some of the symbols found during archaeological digs, such as certain hieroglyphs found in Egypt and cave paintings that depict certain animals. But there's one symbol that's been found all over the world that still leaves experts baffled. The circular symbol in question depicts 3 hares, animals that look very similar to rabbits, each of which shares an ear with another, resulting in just 3 ears being visible. Many attempts have been made to ascertain what the hairs are meant to represent, but all have failed since there doesn't seem to be any consistency between the areas where they've been found. Some examples have been observed in the Middle East, others were found in churches across Europe, some are in churches in England, and they're even present in cave temples in China, these being the oldest ever discovered as they date back to the 6th and 7th centuries. Even more confusing is the fact that they don't seem to correlate to any specific religion or civilization, as they've been found in areas associated with Christianity, paganism, Judaism, Buddhism, and Islam. What is known is that the examples found in China are meant to represent tranquility and peace. It's believed that the symbol then made its way to Europe via the Silk Road, and from there it eventually arrived in England, specifically Devon. This is mere speculation, though, as there is evidence that the symbols were created independently of each other, which would be an amazing coincidence to say the least. When used in Christianity, the hairs are said to represent the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The symbol has also been observed in synagogues in Germany, and it's been noted that it closely resembles a pagan symbol known as the triquetra. Since this symbol is ambiguous in its meaning, it isn't known whether this similarity has any significance. In Chinese mythology, the hare represents resurrection, while in paganism it's associated with a goddess called Astra as well as the moon, since people used to believe that hares had a gestation period of 28 days, which is, of course, not the case since their gestation period lasts between 38 and 52 days depending on the type of hare. It's also said that some cultures used the symbol because they believed a hare laid the cosmic egg from which all creation arose, and it's even been suggested that this is the origin of the Easter Bunny and the Easter eggs that we're all familiar with. Since the symbol can be viewed from any angle, many people believe that it's supposed to represent eternity or the connection that is said to exist between heaven and earth. Since hares are known to multiply at an incredible rate, others have suggested that this is a symbol of fertility. But despite a lot of research being done on the subject, these theories have never been proven beyond a doubt. When the symbol was shown to a monk in France, he was outraged at the suggestion that the symbol could be associated with Christianity, but he failed to shed any light on what the symbol actually meant, likely because he also had no idea. The true meaning behind the 3 hares in this symbol remains a mystery to this day, but it's believed that with further research being carried out in the future, we may just learn what they're meant to represent one day. But for now, we can only venture a guess. Number 6. Endurance Shipwreck Discovery. This image of a ship named the Endurance is already enough to induce anxiety in a lot of people, but its backstory is one that's filled with adventure, strife, and tragedy that's still spoken about today. In 1914, the First World War had just broken out, and a British explorer named Ernest Shackleton was set to lead an expedition of 27 men to Antarctica. But upon learning that the war had broken out, he contacted Winston Churchill and made the ship available to the military. However, Churchill decided that the expedition should continue as planned. Shackleton and his men approached the Arctic from the Weddell Sea, the first time that this had ever been done, while a second party headed for the Ross Sea. Their objective was to leave supplies for the first party in different areas from the Pole to the Ross Sea, and they were successful, but this came at the cost of 3 of their party losing their lives in the process. Shackleton and his men had made good progress by the start of the following year, but it was then that they too ran into trouble as the Endurance became lodged in the ice. The ship was still intact, though, and so the men decided to use it as a camp. But as time went by, pressure from the ice started to have an impact, and the ship started to break up. 9 months later, the ship's condition had deteriorated so badly that Shackleton decided it would be safer to abandon it, which he and his men then did. Each of the explorers grabbed no more than 2 pounds of supplies by Shackleton's orders, and on the 21st of November, the Endurance finally vanished beneath the ice and water. Instead of being part of an expedition looking to cross the Antarctic, they'd now become part of a group that was fighting to survive. A camp was set up on a nearby ice floe, and then, utilizing the ship's lifeboats, they decided to travel to Elephant Island to camp there. Shackleton and 5 of the men then used the lifeboats to reach South Georgia, where they relayed the news of the failed expedition and the men that remained on the island. It would only be in August of the following year that those men were rescued, and amazingly, they all survived. However, the ship was lost, and in the decades that followed, there was much speculation as to whether it would ever be located. In 2022, an expedition was launched from Cape Town in South Africa to do just that. Thankfully, as the Endurance sank, its captain, Frank Worsley, made a note of its exact location, and with the use of sonar, it was located just 4 miles south of that spot. To ensure that they had indeed found the Endurance, an underwater vehicle equipped with cameras was sent down beneath the ice, and it was found that not only was it indeed the Endurance, but the ship was remarkably well preserved. John Shears, the leader of the expedition, stated that they could see some of the ship's original paint as well as some of its ropes and rigging, noting that the hull had almost no creatures living on it and the ship's name was clearly legible in the images captured by the underwater vessel's cameras. Thanks to the Antarctic Treaty, the ship will not be removed from the water and instead will serve as a historic site and monument dedicated to Shackleton and his men's historic journey. Number 5. Haunted Myrtles Plantation. If you're a fan of the paranormal, chances are you'll need no introduction to Myrtles Plantation. But for the uninitiated, it's situated in St. Francisville, Louisiana. Its fame comes from claims that it's one of the most haunted houses in America, the most famous ghost said to haunt its halls being a former slave called Chloe. It's said that she took revenge on the family by poisoning their food, but the claims have been debunked since none of the family's members ever succumbed in this manner. There have also been rumors that the house was constructed on top of a Native American burial ground, and that a woman from one of these tribes also haunts the grounds, along with a host of other equally terrifying claims. Today, the house is open to tourists, many of whom hope to have a paranormal experience of their own, though some soon come to regret it since they'll catch a glimpse of a shadow moving when it shouldn't or see something in one of the most haunted pieces of decoration in the house, a specific mirror. The rumor that the mirror is haunted has been further bolstered by a photo taken by a nurse from Lafayette, Jamie Lannett. She and her family had traveled to the plantation to spend the day there, to learn about its history, and to possibly experience something paranormal. While there, they took several photos inside the house. When the tour was over, they all checked their photos and were disappointed to find that they all seemed normal. But when Jamie got home, she studied the photos more closely and was shocked by what she found. At one point, her son had taken a photo of the famous mirror, and she saw not only the reflection of her son but also of a figure that wasn't in the room at the time, and she was certain that it was a spirit. She then realized that the image closely resembled Kate Winter, who had sadly passed away of typhoid when she was just 3 years old. When the image in the mirror was compared to that of a portrait of Kate, it was found to be a close match, and many people agreed that this was indeed her spirit that was present in the room that day. Jamie added that the spirit must have been floating in the room since the image in the mirror was about 7 feet from the ground, and the thought of being in the room with a ghost was a terrifying one. Another strange photo was taken of the mirror in the past, with one showing a transparent figure seemingly lingering near it, while a group of visitors gathered around the mirror to listen to the house's long history. There have also been reports of the ghost of an unknown woman dwelling in the house, as she's been spotted in different rooms at different times during the day and night. The one certain thing is that Myrtles Plantation's reputation for being haunted is as secure as it's ever been. Number 4. The Copal Cipher Mystery. The Freemasons have been the subject of many mysteries throughout history, and the secret society has once again been named as the possible authors of a mysterious document called the Copal Cipher. It's believed that the cipher was created between 1742 and 1760 by the Freemasons, who were then known as the Great Enlightened Society of Occultists. This order used ciphers to keep their rituals secret in case they somehow ended up in the wrong hands. The Copal Cipher is made up of around 75,000 handwritten characters written across 105 pages, which have been bound in green and gold paper. Strangely, there's no spacing between the words contained in the text, which is made up of 90 different characters, some of which were Roman. For a long time, the manuscript's contents and purpose remained a mystery. But in 2011, Dr. Kevin Knight worked with a team from Uppsala University in Sweden, and they were hopeful that they could crack the cipher against all odds. At first, the task seemed daunting as they didn't seem to be making any progress, but they then realized that the Roman characters weren't actually part of the text but rather served as spaces between the actual words. They then made the discovery that any colons in the text indicated the previous consonant should be duplicated, and at last, they were making inroads to translating the strange document. Their next breakthrough came thanks to a guess that the text was encrypted German, and when they ran it through a word frequency analysis program, they realized that their guess had hit the mark. They could now finally start translating the intriguing text, and they were soon able to report that the manuscript contained descriptions of certain rituals as well as political stances of German society that existed in the 1730s. Strangely, the document contained a lot of information on ophthalmology, which refers to the knowledge of the human eye, including its biology, the diseases that affect it, and how it works. What made this even stranger was the fact that none of the secret society's members practiced ophthalmology, and hence no one is sure why the group was so fascinated by the subject. The first 16 pages of the document named the society as the High Enlightened and also included the initiation rites that were performed whenever a new member joined their ranks. The ceremony involved the new initiate being told to read the text on a piece of paper, but when it's handed to them, they find that it's completely blank. When they then state that they can't read the page, they're handed a pair of glasses and told to try again. This obviously didn't help, and when they once again state they can see no words on the page, they're told to wash their eyes with a cloth before making another attempt. When they fail to read the page the last time, they're told to undergo an operation which involved plucking just one eyebrow hair, and once this was done, the initiation was completed after they read from a page that now contained some text. Thanks to modern technology and the persistence of Dr. Knight and his 2 associates, we now have a better understanding of the secret society and its strange practices, and the mystery behind the Copal Cipher has finally been solved centuries after it was first created. Number 3. Mysterious Housea Castle. Haunted castles are a well-known trope of many horror movies, and with good reason. Old castles are creepy at the best of times, especially when they've been abandoned, and many paranormal investigations have taken place in these types of buildings. It may be because most castles have a rich history or because they were the sites of ferocious battles that they're thought to be haunted. In most cases, these hauntings are taken with a grain of salt, but one building known as Housea Castle has people convinced that spirits dwell within its halls, as this type of activity has been reported there since its construction, which took place in the 13th century in central Bohemia in the Czech Republic. But even the choice of a location for the castle's construction is baffling since it was extremely isolated, meaning that it had no constant water source and rainwater had to be collected in a cistern. It had no kitchen, the windows were fake, and it had no strategic military use since it was far too far away from anything that needed to be protected. The construction of the buildings was finally completed, but no one moved in, and it stood empty. It's said that the idea for the castle to be built was that of Ottokar II of Bohemia, and that it was built over a pit that could not be filled in since it was bottomless. Attempts were made to fill it in with rocks, but these efforts failed, as no amount of stone made any difference in its depth. Thus, rumors began to spread that the pit was a gateway to hell, and soon people started reporting that they'd seen strange creatures emerging from it, including demons, spirits, terrifying winged creatures, and even a headless horse. These were followed by claims of sightings of human-animal hybrids living in the pit, some of which were half-human, half-bullfrog. The pit had become the source of countless such tales, and so the decision was made to construct the castle around it, not to keep the evil creatures out but to keep them from escaping. It's further said that the construction was done by prisoners who'd been given the death penalty, and that they were given the opportunity of receiving a full pardon if they agreed to be lowered down into the pit to record what they saw while they were down there. Most prisoners would have likely jumped at this chance since they would receive a new lease on life, but they would soon learn that this was a very bad idea. Legend has it that the first prisoner to volunteer quickly regretted his decision, as he started screaming just a short while after being lowered down. He was quickly pulled back up again but was a shadow of his former self, unable to string two intelligible words together. People at the site stated that he had instantly aged by as much as 30 years, and just 2 days later, he passed away. People also reported seeing a monk dressed in black guarding the entrance to the pit, and eventually, according to folklore, a man named Aranto, who was a black magic practitioner, moved into the building. Here, he tried to find the source of eternal life, but when it came to light that he was doing the devil's work inside the castle, it was stormed and his life was ended. Today, the castle is owned by the descendants of the president of Stechivus, Joseph Simon. Modern-day visitors often hear scratching noises coming from beneath the chapel that was built over the pit, and some have even claimed to have seen full-body apparitions thought to be the spirits of the castle's past inhabitants. While most people remain skeptical about these stories, many others are certain that the creatures that are said to live in the pit are still trying to get out, and that the sounds that can be heard coming from beneath the chapel are proof of this. Number 2. Ancient Gourd Discovery. When conducting an archaeology study, one would think that the last place to find anything of significance would be on remnants of a gourd. But that's exactly what's been found in Norte Chico, Peru. It's believed that the people who lived in this area between 2600 and 2000 BC, known as the late pre-ceramic period, were advanced enough to construct large and complex towns that contained massive plazas, monuments made of stone, and administrative buildings. But strangely, they didn't have access to other materials that are often found at similar sites, including ceramics, elaborate decorations, or gold. As a result, very few records of these people exist, and we know next to nothing about their day-to-day lives or their religious beliefs. However, that is set to change thanks to a discovery made by archaeologists Jonathan Haas, Winifred Creamer, and Alvaro Ruiz. Haas hails from the Chicago Field Museum, Creamer is from Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, and Ruiz serves as the co-director of the Norte Chico Archaeology Project. Together, they've taken on the task of studying the Norte area to learn as much as they can about the civilization that once lived and prospered there. The gourd fragments found by the team in 2002 were discovered while they were at the location of a looted burial site situated about 118 miles to the north of Lima, Peru's capital. When the two gourd fragments were sent to be radiocarbon dated, they were found to be from 2250 BC. They contained an image that's been found in other locations around the world, that of the staff god. The figure depicts a strange fanged creature with its feet spread and, in its right hand, it's carrying a staff. Its left hand doesn't look like the right, since rather than fingers, the hand ends in a snake's head. The team quickly realized that this image suggests that this ancient civilization believed in the same deity as other civilizations that once lived in or near the Andes, since depictions of this same figure have been found in those areas too. The deity is almost always shown in this exact same pose that's been likened to the Bantu art style, though several different versions of the figure have been found around the world. But it's thought that the version found on the gourds in Norte Chico is the oldest ever discovered, and hence we can now start to gain a better understanding of the people who lived here in the distant past, as well as their religious practices. It may answer one question that's been nagging historians for a long time, whether or not the Chavan civilization that appeared later in history originated in the highlands or on the coast of Peru. The discovery of these gourds indicates that they likely developed their art style in the coastal regions. Furthermore, where owning this type of religious symbolism was usually reserved for the rich and powerful, the fact that this image was carved into an easily transported gourd indicates that this was not yet the case, and that anyone, no matter how poor they were, could create and own one. The team of archaeologists also found another depiction of the same figure at a cemetery not too far from the first site, also carved into a gourd fragment. Hence, It's believed that the figure was a truly important part of the civilization's religious practices. While there's still much to be learned, this discovery has already revealed a lot more than we knew before it was uncovered. Number 1. Haunted Painting Mystery. A beautiful piece of art can make a big difference to just about any room, depending on the subject matter. One would assume that this painting of a stagecoach might do just that since the colors are bright and it seems to have a slight innocence to it. But it would seem that the exact opposite is true since this particular painting is said to be haunted. The story begins with a photograph taken at Tombstone, Arizona, by a man named James Kidd. The image was an intentional double exposure that was created by first taking a photo of an old stagecoach stop where a coach was parked at the historic site, and then taking another of a wagon without winding the camera to the next negative on the film. Kidd had a fair idea of what the image would look like once it was developed, but when he did so, he was taken completely by surprise. To the left of the old wagon, he spotted a man standing on top of what looked like a log. Since he was certain that there was no one in that spot when he took the photos, he was perplexed. But when he looked at the image a little more closely, his confusion turned to horror as he realized that the man was missing his head. He contacted experts from a leading photography company and consulted with several other experts, all of whom confirmed that the image had not been altered. Artist Laura P. saw the photo while it was being displayed in an art gallery in Tombstone, where she was also displaying some of her own work. For a long time after seeing it, it stuck in her mind. She then contacted Kidd and asked if he would allow her to create an oil painting of it, and Kidd agreed. But the project didn't go quite as smoothly as the artist had imagined, as she started becoming aware of a strange feeling while working on the piece. She couldn't understand why she was drawn to the image and started to think that she should never have created the painting. But she forged on and completed it. Soon after it was done, she started experiencing strange events in her home, and she felt certain that they had something to do with the painting. The first incident took place in an office building where the painting was being displayed. Just 3 days after it was hung on the wall, she got a call from staff at the office who asked her to remove it. Paperwork had started going missing or had been inexplicably mixed up, and no matter how many times they straightened it, the painting would always be found hanging crooked the following morning when they arrived. Then, in 1995, Laura and her husband moved into a new home in Tennessee, and they were annoyed to find that the garage roof had a leak. They had the problem seen to on several occasions, but no leak was ever found. When her husband asked where the painting was being kept, they realized it had been placed against the garage and the living room's interconnecting wall. As soon as they removed it, the leak stopped and never returned. Other inexplicable events that occurred at the house included salt being spilled while no one was in the room, decorations flying off walls, a heavy gate falling off its hinges when it should not have been possible, a white translucent figure appearing to her neighbor, and knocks at the front door when no one was there. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads.